Describing bilingualism. 4 essential questions. Now, if we want to describe bilingualism, for instance, if you would like to take it up as a part of your research to describe bilingualism around you, there are 4 essential questions that you need to identify with or address in order to research. Having said that, please keep in mind that the definitions of bilingualism are not only that they are different, but they have been constantly changing. So there was a time when we believed that bilingualism would mean that a person would have full control over more than one language. Later on, we also said that even if a person has some control over one or the other language, then it is all right and we can still call that person bilingual. And then comes a time when we have sort of accepted that there might always be an unequal control over different languages. For instance, even when you look at those interpreters that are hired for translating language at official level, you will realize that these interpreters also have one strong language and the other one is sort of passive, or they have lesser control over that language. In any case, we need to keep in mind this active versus passive control of languages. You might like to know what do we mean by active or passive control over languages. Active control is a control whereby you can actually speak and also write and also understand the language very well. When you have a passive control over language, that would mean you might not be able to speak and write so well in that language. However, you can listen and understand, and you might also be able to read that language with comprehension to a certain degree. So we are saying bilingualism always involves 2 languages or more than 2 languages, and then once we define languages at that, it somehow also enables us to address the issue that at what point has one acquired a higher proficiency in one language in relation to the other. Now, the point we are making over here is that although we need to narrowly define bilinguality, whenever we are trying to research bilingualism or bilinguality, one needs to keep in mind that what we are researching is only true for that moment. That would mean that with the flux of time, a person might become more proficient in language B and less proficient in language A, although that person was at another given time was more proficient in A and lesser proficient in B. That means bilingualism or bilinguality are in a constant change and a constant flux. In any case, for research purposes, to determine how these languages coexist becomes difficult. Other significant dimensions to consider if you are going to research bilingualism or know more regarding it, one needs to keep in mind the question of degree. So the question is, to what degree does a bilingual know the languages? And we have stated certain issues related to it, and we'll come back to it in more detail in the coming modules. Similarly, the other problem that we have to address is related to the function of the languages that the person puts them to. So the question is, for what functions are different languages used by individuals or in a given community? Then the question that we need to address, and we will address it in terms of understanding it more, is alternation. What languages, or to what extent are languages shifted between, or how much or how less does code switching occur? And lastly, we need to understand, if we want to describe bilingualism, then we need to understand the question of interference. How much does a bilingual keep the two languages separate, or has the ability of understanding the two language systems as they work separately from each other?